Multiple news outlets are reporting that North Korean dictator Kim Jong Un has died.
Kim Jong Un is declared dead by his personal medical staff, and a power vacuum forms, setting the stage for a chaotic struggle that will shape the future of North Korea and the world. From the uncertain succession within the Kim family, inevitable power grabs by military leaders, these are the 14 crazy things that will happen when Kim Jong Un dies. Number 14. Power struggle within the Kim's family. The death of Kim Jong Un would almost inevitably trigger a fierce power struggle within the Kim family, a dynasty that has ruled North Korea with an iron fist for decades. As the third generation of the Kim Dynasty, Kim Jong Un inherited his power from his father, who in turn took over from the founding leader of North Korea. This hereditary succession has long been the cornerstone of the regime's stability, but with Kim Jong Un's death, the question arises, who will take the reins? One of the most likely contenders would be Kim Yo-jong, Kim Jong Un's younger sister. She has been a prominent figure in his regime, often appearing at key events and even serving as a de facto leader in certain situations, such as during diplomatic engagements with South Korea and the United States. Kim Yo-jong's rise in prominence suggests she could be seen as a natural successor. However, her ascent might not be uncontested. Another potential rival could be Kim Pyong, Kim Jong Un's uncle, who has recently returned to North Korea after decades abroad as an ambassador. His return to the country has sparked speculation that he might harbor ambitions of taking power, especially given his closer ties to the military, which could be a critical factor in any succession struggle. Also, Kim Jong Un reportedly has children, though very little is known about them due to the extreme secrecy surrounding his family. His oldest child, a son, is believed to have been born around 2010, while another child, possibly a daughter, was reportedly born in 2013. There are also rumors of a third child born in 2017. However, given their young ages, it is unlikely that any of them would be ready to assume leadership in the event of Kim Jong Un's sudden death. Beyond these key figures, there might be other family members or close allies who believe they have a legitimate claim to leadership. This could lead to internal conflicts, with different factions within the regime backing different contenders. The outcome of this power struggle would be pivotal in determining North Korea's future trajectory, both internally and on the global stage. Number 13. Potential military coup. The possibility of a military coup in North Korea following Kim Jong Un's death is a scenario that could dramatically reshape the nation's power structure. North Korea's military, known as the Korean People's Army, also known as the KPA, holds significant power and influence within the country. With approximately 1.3 million active soldiers and a deeply entrenched role in the state's governance, the military could become the key player in the post-Kim Jong-un era. In the event of Kim Jong-un's sudden death, especially if it occurs without a clear successor in place, the KPA might seize the opportunity to assert its dominance. Historically, militaries in other authoritarian regimes have often taken control during periods of uncertainty, particularly when the existing power structure is weak or divided. North Korea's military leaders, who have long been loyal to the Kim Dynasty, might see this as their moment to step out of the shadows and take direct control. One of the factors that could drive a military coup is the potential power vacuum left by Kim Jong-un's death. Without a strong, undisputed leader from the Kim family, the military might argue that only they have the capability to maintain order and stability in the country. The military's control over the country's nuclear arsenal would also be a significant factor, as it could use this leverage to gain legitimacy and deter any internal or external threats to its rule. A military coup could lead to a dangerous power vacuum, with various factions within the KPA and other elements of the government vying for control. This could result in internal conflict, with different groups attempting to assert their authority, leading to widespread instability. Neighboring countries like South Korea and China, as well as global powers like the United States, would closely monitor the situation, concerned about the potential for conflict or even the use of North Korea's nuclear weapons. Number 12. Risk of civil war. One of the most extreme and chaotic outcomes of Kim Jong Un's death could be a full-blown civil war within North Korea. This scenario, while seemingly far-fetched, becomes plausible in the absence of a clear successor, as various factions within the regime, military leaders, political elites, and even members of the Kim family could vie for control. North Korea's tightly controlled society could unravel quickly if the central authority collapses. The military, which holds significant power, might split into competing factions, each backing different leaders or ideologies. For example, one faction could support a continuation of the Kim Dynasty, while another might push for military rule or even a more reformist government. These divisions could lead to armed conflict, as each side attempts to seize power and secure its future. Historically, countries that have experienced sudden leadership voids, especially in authoritarian regimes, have often descended into civil war. The power vacuum in North Korea could similarly trigger internal conflicts, particularly if external powers, such as China or South Korea, attempt to influence the outcome. A civil war in North Korea would likely lead to widespread chaos, with devastating effects on the population. The conflict could result in mass displacement, famine, and even the use of the country's nuclear arsenal as factions struggle for dominance. The international community would be forced to respond, potentially leading to a broader regional conflict. In this worst-case scenario, North Korea's internal strife could destabilize the entire Korean peninsula with far-reaching consequences for global security. Number 11. Humanitarian Crisis. The collapse or significant instability of the North Korean regime following Kim Jong Un's death could unleash a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. For decades, the North Korean government has tightly controlled its population, restricting movement, access to information, and contact with the outside world. However, in the event of a power vacuum or civil unrest, these controls could weaken or break down entirely, leading to widespread chaos. One of the most immediate consequences could be a massive exodus of North Koreans attempting to flee the country. The harsh realities of life in North Korea, chronic food shortages, political repression, and lack of basic freedoms have already driven some to risk their lives escaping across the heavily fortified borders. However, if the regime collapses, these numbers could swell dramatically, creating a refugee crisis on an unprecedented scale. Neighboring countries like China and South Korea would likely be the primary destinations for these refugees. China, which shares a long border with North Korea, has already dealt with waves of North Korean defectors in the past. A sudden surge in refugees could overwhelm border regions. China, concerned about the potential instability on its border, might respond by tightening security, leading to humanitarian concerns as desperate people attempt to cross the border under increasingly dangerous conditions. South Korea, while more likely to welcome North Korean defectors, could also face significant challenges. The sudden influx of refugees would strain resources, particularly if large numbers of malnourished and traumatized individuals require immediate assistance. The integration of these refugees into South Korean society, which is culturally and economically different from North Korea, would be another long-term challenge. International aid organizations would be called upon to respond to the crisis, but the logistical difficulties of operating in or near a destabilized North Korea would be immense. Number 10. Revolutionary change. The death of Kim Jong Un could open the door to a revolutionary change in North Korea, potentially leading to the overthrow of the regime and the establishment of a new government. Such a revolution, while highly risky in a country as tightly controlled as North Korea, could be fueled by a combination of internal dissent, economic hardship, and a desire for freedom among the population. The military, political elites, and even ordinary citizens could rise up against the regime, particularly if the leadership succession process becomes chaotic or if economic conditions deteriorate further. North Korea has already experienced significant hardship, including food shortages, international sanctions, and the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. These pressures could push the population to a breaking point, sparking widespread unrest. One possible outcome of a successful revolution could be the reunification of North and South Korea. South Korea has long advocated for peaceful reunification, and if the North Korean regime were to collapse, this could become a reality. However, reunification would come with significant challenges, including the integration of two vastly different societies and economies. The process would require careful management to avoid further instability and ensure a smooth transition. Alternatively, a revolution could lead to the establishment of a new government in North Korea, potentially one that is more open and less repressive. Such a government might seek to reform the economy, improve relations with the international community, and provide greater freedoms to its citizens. Number 9. Heightened tensions with South Korea and the U.S. The death of Kim Jong Un could dramatically escalate military tensions between North Korea, South Korea, and the United States, pushing the region closer to conflict. Kim Jong Un's leadership has been marked by a volatile mix of provocative missile tests and diplomatic engagements. His death would leave a power vacuum that could exacerbate existing tensions and prompt aggressive actions from various factions within North Korea. In the immediate aftermath of Kim Jong Un's death, the North Korean military might perceive an opportunity to assert its power or to distract from internal instability by engaging in aggressive posturing. This could include ramping up missile tests, conducting military exercises, or making provocative statements. Such actions would likely provoke strong reactions from South Korea and the United States, both of which have a vested interest in maintaining stability on the Korean peninsula. South Korea, which has long been on high alert due to North Korea's military activities, might heighten its defenses in response to increased provocations. The possibility of an unstable or hostile regime in the North could lead South Korea to strengthen its military readiness and seek closer security cooperation with the U.S. Historical precedents suggest that leadership transitions in authoritarian regimes often lead to increased regional tensions. For example, the death of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin in 1953 initially led to heightened tensions with the West until a new equilibrium was established. Similarly, the end of the Cold War saw a period of increased tension in the immediate aftermath of major geopolitical changes. In the context of North Korea, the potential for increased military tensions poses a serious risk. The region could face a higher likelihood of accidental conflicts, miscalculations, or even deliberate provocations as factions within North Korea vie for power and test the resolve of neighboring countries and the international community. The risk of conflict would not only destabilize the Korean peninsula, but could also have far-reaching consequences for global security, highlighting the urgent need for diplomatic efforts to manage the delicate balance of power in this volatile region. Number 8. Increased military aggression. The death of Kim Jong Un could lead to a new leader, potentially one with more aggressive tendencies, who might significantly escalate military actions. In the highly controlled and secretive environment of North Korea, the succession of power is a delicate and often turbulent process. A new leader, especially if they are more hawkish or driven by a desire to assert their authority, might increase military aggression to consolidate power and demonstrate strength. Historically, transitions in leadership within authoritarian regimes have sometimes led to heightened aggression as new leaders seek to establish their credibility. In North Korea, where the regime has used military might as a tool for both internal control and external diplomacy, a more aggressive leader could intensify these tactics. This might include ramping up the frequency of missile tests, conducting more provocative military exercises, and making aggressive statements aimed at neighboring countries, particularly South Korea and Japan. Increased military activities might also be used to divert attention from internal issues or to rally domestic support amidst potential unrest. The implications of increased military aggression would be significant. Neighboring countries, particularly South Korea and Japan, would likely boost their own military readiness and seek additional support from allies, such as the United States. This could lead to a dangerous escalation of tensions, with the risk of accidental conflicts or deliberate provocations increasing. For instance, during periods of heightened aggression, North Korea has previously conducted missile tests that have prompted international condemnation and led to increased sanctions. A new leader with a more aggressive stance could exacerbate these dynamics, leading to a more unstable and potentially conflict-prone environment in the region. In summary, the death of Kim Jong Un could pave the way for a new leader whose increased military aggression might heighten regional tensions and instability. The international community would need to carefully navigate these developments, balancing diplomatic efforts with preparedness to mitigate the risks of escalating conflict. Number 7. Increased surveillance and repression. Following Kim Jong Un's death, a new regime in North Korea could intensify surveillance and repression as a means to maintain control and suppress dissent. In a country where the government already employs pervasive surveillance and severe repression, any new leader might feel compelled to escalate these measures to solidify their authority and prevent challenges to their rule. Historically, regimes facing internal uncertainty or leadership transitions often resort to increased repression to stabilize their control. A new leader might bolster the existing network of surveillance to monitor and control the population even more tightly. This could involve expanding the reach of state security agencies, increasing the use of informants, and deploying more advanced surveillance technology. The regime could also implement stricter controls over communication and information, further isolating the population from external influences and suppressing any potential for dissent. The increased repression could lead to a surge in human rights abuses. Political dissidents, real or perceived, might face harsher punishments, including arbitrary arrests, torture, or even execution. The general population could experience heightened restrictions on freedom of movement and expression, with severe penalties for even minor infractions against the regime's rules. The international community, including human rights organizations and foreign governments, would likely respond with increased scrutiny and condemnation. However, North Korea's isolated nature and tight control over information could make it difficult to accurately assess the extent of the repression and respond effectively. Number 6. Secrecy and confusion. The death of Kim Jong Un could plunge North Korea into a state of heightened secrecy and confusion, amplifying uncertainty both within the country and on the international stage. North Korea's government is notoriously opaque, and the death of its supreme leader would likely exacerbate this characteristic, creating a period marked by intense speculation and misinformation. Historically, North Korea has demonstrated a tendency for extreme secrecy in times of crisis or transition. For instance, the death of Kim Jong-un was initially shrouded in mystery. The official announcement came only after several days of silence, during which speculation and rumors about the leader's health and the stability of the regime ran rampant. The ensuing period of uncertainty saw heightened scrutiny from both domestic and international observers, with concerns about potential power struggles and the regime's ability to maintain control. Similarly, if Kim Jong-un were to die, the North Korean government might adopt a similarly secretive approach. Official statements and updates could be delayed or carefully controlled to avoid public panic or to manage internal power dynamics. This secrecy could result in a chaotic and confusing environment for the North Korean people, who would likely face misinformation and a lack of clear information about their leader's death and the future of their country. Internationally, the confusion would be equally pronounced. Foreign governments and intelligence agencies would struggle to discern the true state of affairs within North Korea, leading to a proliferation of speculative reports and conflicting analyses. The uncertainty could prompt increased vigilance and precautionary measures from neighboring countries, such as South Korea and Japan, and could also affect diplomatic and economic relations with major powers like the United States and China. Number 5. Economic instability. The death of Kim Jong Un could exacerbate the economic instability in North Korea, leading to a series of severe disruptions including shortages, inflation, and potentially even famine. North Korea's economy is already fragile, heavily reliant on state control and facing persistent challenges due to international sanctions, mismanagement, and isolation. The transition of power might disrupt normal administrative functions, leading to inefficiencies and delays in economic management. This disruption could impact key sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, and trade, which are essential for the country's economy. Shortages of essential goods, including food, medicine, and fuel, could become more pronounced. North Korea has faced food insecurity for years, with periodic famines and chronic malnutrition affecting large segments of the population. The death of Kim Jong Un could worsen these conditions if supply chains are disrupted or if there are delays in distributing aid and resources. Inflation might also surge as the country struggles to maintain economic stability. Without a strong central authority to enforce economic policies and stabilize the currency, prices for basic goods could skyrocket. This could lead to a severe decrease in purchasing power for ordinary North Koreans, compounding the difficulties of accessing essential items. Countries and organizations might impose additional sanctions or tighten existing ones in response to perceived instability or potential human rights abuses, further straining North Korea's economy. All right, it's time for our subscribers' pick. Imagine the scene. On one side, a somber image of Kim Jong Un in an open coffin, symbolizing the end of an era. On the other, the chilling prospect of nuclear war, with North Korean generals observing intently. Well, we can only imagine the potential chaos that could follow his demise. Will the country descend into internal strife, or will a new leader escalate military tensions? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop your opinions and predictions about North Korea's future in the comments below. Number 4. China's strategic influence. In the event of Kim Jong Un's death, China's strategic influence could play a pivotal role in shaping the succession process and stabilizing the Korean peninsula. As North Korea's primary ally and economic partner, China has a vested interest in maintaining stability in the region and managing the power vacuum that might ensue. This involvement could have significant geopolitical implications, potentially reshaping the balance of power in East Asia. China has historically maintained a close relationship with North Korea, driven by a combination of strategic, economic, and security interests. The stability of North Korea is crucial for China to prevent a potential flood of refugees, avoid the spread of instability to its northeastern provinces, and maintain a buffer zone between itself and South Korea, a U.S. ally. In the event of Kim Jong Un's death, China is likely to act decisively to influence the succession process to ensure that a stable, friendly regime remains in power. China might employ a range of strategies to achieve this. It could offer diplomatic support to a favored successor or seek to influence internal North Korean power struggles through behind-the-scenes negotiations. China might also increase its military presence or establish closer ties with North Korean military leaders to ensure that any new leadership aligns with its interests. China's influence in the Korean peninsula has been significant. During the Korean War, Chinese forces intervened to support North Korea against South Korean and UN forces. More recently, China has played a role in diplomatic efforts related to North Korea's nuclear program, including participation in the six-party talks aimed at denuclearization. The possibility of a North Korean regime change or significant instability might prompt China to increase its influence through economic aid, military alliances, or even direct intervention if necessary. The goal would be to prevent a power vacuum that could lead to regional instability or a potential reunification of Korea that might alter the balance of power in East Asia. Number 3. Continuation of the Kim Dynasty. If the Kim family manages to retain power following Kim Jong Un's death, the continuation of the dynasty would likely ensure the persistence of the current oppressive regime, with minimal changes for the North Korean people. The Kim family's grip on power is deeply entrenched in North Korea politics, backed by a well-established system of control and repression. Historically, when transitions have occurred within the Kim dynasty, they have generally involved efforts to reinforce the regime's stability rather than implement significant reforms. Kim Jong Un's ascension in 2011 was marked by a consolidation of power and an increase in repressive measures. Despite some initial speculation about potential reforms, Kim Jong Un's regime has largely perpetuated the same oppressive policies, including severe restrictions on freedom, widespread human rights abuses, and a heavy focus on military development. If a successor from the Kim family takes the helm, the expectation is that the regime would continue to operate with the same repressive tactics. The family's tight control over the country's military and security apparatus, coupled with the established practice of purging potential rivals, would likely ensure the preservation of the current system. For example, Kim Jong Un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, has been frequently mentioned as a potential successor. Her prominence within the regime suggests that, if she or another Kim family member assumes leadership, the regime's policies and practices would likely remain consistent. The focus would be on preserving the existing power structures and suppressing dissent, rather than introducing significant reforms or improvements in governance. Number 2. Global media frenzy. The death of Kim Jong Un would undoubtedly trigger a global media frenzy, with news outlets and journalists around the world diving into overdrive to cover every aspect of the event. The intense scrutiny would focus on the cause of death, the immediate future of North Korea, and the broader implications for global security, creating a whirlwind of speculation and analysis. The initial coverage would likely center on the cause of Kim Jong Un's death, with media outlets competing to uncover and verify details. North Korea's notoriously secretive nature means that official reports might be sparse or delayed, fueling rumors and speculation. The media would closely examine possible power struggles, the likelihood of a successor from the Kim family, and the implications for domestic stability. The uncertainty surrounding North Korea's future would drive intense global interest, with analysts offering competing theories about the regime's trajectory. International media would also assess the implications for global security. North Korea's nuclear program and military capabilities make the country a significant player on the world stage. Journalists and experts would evaluate how a change in leadership could affect North Korea's stance on nuclear weapons, its relations with neighboring countries, and its interactions with global powers such as the United States, China, and South Korea. Number 1. Uncertain long-term stability. The death of Kim Jong Un would usher in a period of significant uncertainty regarding North Korea's long-term stability. While the immediate aftermath might be marked by intense speculation and potential chaos, the broader, more enduring outcome could involve a protracted period of instability and gradual change as the regime navigates the transition of power. North Korea's political landscape is notoriously opaque, making it challenging to predict the exact trajectory of stability following the death of its supreme leader. Historically, transitions within the Kim Dynasty have led to periods of uncertainty, though the regime has often managed to reassert control over time. The current regime's ability to maintain long-term stability will depend on several factors, including the effectiveness of the succession plan, the loyalty of key military and party officials, and the resilience of the regime's control mechanisms. If a successor from the Kim family ascends to power, the regime might initially face challenges in asserting authority and managing internal dissent. Even with a dynastic succession, there could be power struggles and factional disputes that impact stability. The potential for gradual change exists if the new leadership introduces reforms or shifts in policy. The international community would closely monitor North Korea's stability, watching for signs of shifts in policy, economic conditions, and human rights practices. The prolonged uncertainty could affect regional security and international relations, with neighboring countries and global powers adjusting their strategies based on the evolving situation. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching.